Today's topic is more about web, right? The web is huge. We're talking about hacking the web.
So I know a few things about how to basically create a website and how to break them.
Today we'll be discussing about something that is related to more of web vulnerabilities and applications.
How does a hacker approach a web application when they're actually trying to hack it?
An outdated component, and it's real. There are publicly available exploits as well.
I think our Aadhaar database got breached, right? And I would say that about 81 crore people's data were released out there for the
And then they sell it on the dark web, right? So, which is the most common bug still that we are looking at?
The most common ones are the ones that are related to authentication, authorization, like broken access control, insecure direct object reference, also known as IDOR, cross-site scripting.
That is the one we still see, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very old attack and we are still seeing it. Hey guys, welcome to our podcast, the Cyber Talk podcast. This time, we're going to be talking about web hacking. Last week, we spoke about thick client applications. I hope that was really useful to you guys. So, welcome back, guys. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Karan. I am the CEO and Technical Director at Redfox Security. What we basically do is pen testing. We are hardcore pen testers. We pen test day in and day out, starting from applications, networks, infrastructure, red teams, hardware, and much more, right? With me, we have like two fabulous pen testers from team Redfox. Guys, please introduce yourselves.
Yeah, I'm Tarak Sakadande. I work as a security consultant at Redfox Security. And it's really great being here. It's like different things, you always test newer things. Just right now, so told about thick clients. Last time we had a podcast about it as well. Today we'll be discussing about something that is related to more of web vulnerabilities and applications.
Yeah, so hey guys, my name is Shashi and I am the lead security consultant at Redfox Security. So I was a software developer a few years back and now I have switched my career into cybersecurity. So I know a few things about how to basically create a website and how to break them. So I think this podcast is going to be a very fun podcast. So yeah.
The cool thing about at Redfox, we have an academy site where we are training newcomers, even folks who are looking to switch industries. These courses have been fine-tuned. They have been built by experts at Team Redfox. Also, at the same time, what we are doing is we are getting our daily experiences into these courses, right? So there's a lot of hard work that's going on in our courses. If you're interested, feel free to browse through our academy site and enroll, right? So there are good discounts. You can DM us, you can send us a message over LinkedIn or across other channels, and we may give you like a good discount coupon, right? So fantastic. So today's topic is more about web, right? The web is huge. We're talking about hacking the web, right? Let's start off with the first important question, right? Why is web application pen testing important, right, guys? One of you, take it.
So nowadays every business or a company has a website and these websites are out there for the people to use and for the hackers to exploit, right? So and these websites hold a lot of people's data. So these data can be your personal sensitive records as well as credit card information and lots of other data. So if a hacker can get hold of this data, I think they can basically blackmail the company or defame the company, as well as they can sell their data in other markets as well. So that's why I would say that nowadays websites are basically a gateway to our sensitive data. So that's why we need our website to be secured.
Okay. So quick question, right? So at Redfox, what kind of web applications, across what industries have you guys seen web applications and pen tested web applications?
Basically, we cover a lot of types of
Web applications.
Web applications. So these web application can go from your educational websites, maybe your hospital website, healthcare, and
manufacturing. All sorts of industries are kind of vulnerable to web application hacking. attacks, right? So this is what we do.
Yeah. So for all of the web applications, even if they are for different industries, the core logic is same. It's still a web application. So our attack methodology is still, it will be the same.
Same, right? Okay. And how it's similar to what we do during a pen test. How does a hacker approach a web application when they're actually trying to hack it?
Okay, so there are a lot of ways that actually an attacker can think about a web application. So there are input fields, there are different majors or something like vulnerable parameters, bodies, and there is a lot to it. But it really depends on a lot of things. Like if the user is actually having a vulnerable and outdated component, and there are publicly available exploits as well. So if you like, there's a one called Google Hacking Database, so you could just search for it as well. And so there are a number of things. So OWASP, there's a Open Web Application Security project, so it basically has guidelines related to it.
Yeah. So I think first we basically start off with all the input parameters. I think they are the most vulnerable, I would say, because that's the first thing that we look at, and then basically we just analyze the website, its functionalities, its authentication mechanism, its authorization mechanisms, and then we will just go from there.
And then what are the consequences, right? So I think you just briefly.
Yeah. So okay, I will give you an example. Like few months back, I think our Aadhaar database got breached, right? And I would say that about 81 crore people's data were released out there for the for basically, I would say the most of the scammers basically feed on this data, and basically what they can do, they have now the personal information, their mobile number, even the passport numbers were breached in that attack.
And then they sell it on the dark web, right?
And
so
basically, yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they will basically call you and basically tell all the information that is related to you, and you know that, yeah, hey, I think that's a trustworthy person because he know so much about data about me. So yeah, and they trust them and they can easily get fooled, and that's how easy.
Cool. So I think web application is the first thing that attackers should actually look at. More than that, I feel that's the entry point, right? Even in if an attacker is looking to get into an infrastructure, they would actually scan the website, they try to hack it, they try to get like a remote code execution, and then pretty much get in, right? So tell me about each of you guys. Yeah, tell me about one crazy bug that you guys have found before we move to the next segments. One crazy bug, and how did you go about doing that?
Okay, so one crazy bug that I really found during my pen test. So there was an account takeover vulnerability. So it actually involves broken access control, also called as authentication and authorization vulnerabilities. So there was really one thing. So after a lot of speculation, there was an ID that was being used. We'll get to it in some moment. And the user had an ID, and by changing the ID to another user, we could actually change the email address and set it to a custom email address that we have made. So what happened is, when we requested for a forget password link, the token got sent to my mail, and using that I could actually take control of the other user's account.
So basically you could escalate to administrator.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I actually did. I was a normal user in the environment, but I escalated to administrator user. So that's how dangerous a broken access control can be.
Wow. And then you, Shashi.
Yeah, so I have a story about a finding that I did not find, but one of my colleagues find. So what's interesting about that vulnerability? So I think few days back we are pen testing a web application, and that application was built using Angular framework. And since I am a developer, so I have already coded in Angular as well. So I know how secure these frameworks are. Yeah. So I made a bet to my colleague that you are not going to find any cross-site scripting vulnerabilities as such. We are going to go into that later on. But yeah, so I made a bet that you are not going to find any injection of cross-site vulnerability in that. And I would say that in just half an hour he found out that vulnerability, and I was like, man. See, the reason why we found that vulnerability, because even though they are using Angular as the framework to build their website, so in some part of their application they were just using HTML. So that is very prone to your the injection attacks. So that's where my colleague find basically a stored cross-site scripting vulnerability, and we know how dangerous this vulnerability is.
So Which is the most common bug still that we are looking at?
The most common ones are the ones that are related to authentication, authorization, like broken access control, insecure direct object reference, also known as IDOR, cross-site scripting.
That is the one we still see, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a very old attack and we are still seeing it.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. So we'll move to the second segment. Vulnerabilities. I think we briefly spoke about them. We'll go into more depth here. Can you please explain what IDOR is? I think one of...
Yeah, sure, I'll go ahead with it. So IDOR actually stands for Insecure Direct Object Reference. So before I get into the more technical terms, I would really like to give a real life example that I personally had been through. So when we were back in college, and there were fests for different departments. So if we had to enter a fest of a specific department where we were not authorized, let's say, so the watchman used to ask for the ID and we would probably take an ID from our friends, right? And then we would get the access. So this is something that is related to IDOR. But now when you talk about the web applications, what happens is that the ID is used for different purposes. Like it can be your profile, it can be something like your documents, files, and what happens is that the server says, so let's say an example. So there's a URL, okay? There's like test.com/profile_ID, and then there's the ID that you use. So let's say you have an ID that is 7, I have an ID that is 5, and he's the administrator. So if I change my ID from 5 to 7, I could actually access the administrator account. So this actually happened in Facebook as well. I think back in mapping to 2012, where the attackers could actually gain access to private albums that were stored by people. So yeah, this was IDOR. As easy as it seems, it's really visible in the URLs. It is also visible in the request. But still, it looks simple, but it's very dangerous.
Why is it that serious, right? So I think we spoke about privilege escalation vectors here, right?
Yeah.
So can you briefly explain, is it horizontal or vertical or both?
Okay, it can be horizontal as well. It is vertical also, because it really depends on the situation. For example, if I'm an administrator user and I have an ID of, let's say, 70, and the normal user, so basically we can tamper these IDs and check for different. There's a attack called brute force as well, so you can even use that in order to gain. So it is, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I was going to ask you about which tools would you use for this?
Yeah, surely. So coming to tools, we can use Burp Suite's intruder tool that is there. So what actually it does, it uses different combinations. So let's say I've got the URL, okay, and now I actually want to tamper with the values. So I would go with something like, hey man, give me the values from 1 to 100, and then that Burp Suite intruder tool will actually try all of those combinations. And if you get a valid request, so it doesn't really stop here. So if you have actually got the access to a right ID that can be an administrator as well, you will get a 200 OK request in the response.
Pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that these IDOR vulnerabilities are very easy to exploit.
Yeah.
As Tarak mentioned, that we can just change the parameter value, and these values are very easy to guess. We all know what a user ID 0 is.
Yeah.
It's your ID.
So actually, in one of the pen tests, it was as easy as just changing a number from 10 to 11.
Yeah. So yeah, you see. So how easy it is,
What are some techniques for bypassing web application firewalls, guys?
Yeah, so there are many techniques. I would say basically we play with the input parameters. So what we do, basically we encode this parameter in a way that it can be bypassed by your web firewalls. Other techniques I can think of is your basically playing with lots of different inputs and seeing what's the output that we are getting, and we know how that WAF is implemented, and basically from there we can just bypass the things that the WAF is basically passing over.
I would like to put an example as well. So usually I had encountered this in my personal pen test as well. So there were web application firewalls. They were trying to block scripts. This is something related to cross-site scripting, which we will be briefing in some time. But so there are different ways that you can encode those characters. You can have different bypasses. These bypasses are also available on Twitter or GitHub as well. But also you can manually, obfuscate it and then bypass the firewall. This is just one way of it.
Wow. Okay, few questions coming in. Basic to dynamic. That's the user. How can we mitigate IDOR?
Yeah. Okay. So good question there. Yeah. You can go ahead.
So basically what we do, instead of using simple IDs, we will use UUID. Basically these IDs are uniquely different and very hard to guess, or we can use obfuscate these IDs so that it should not be easily guessable. So I think that's the best implementation that we can do.
That's recommended.
Yeah, that's OWASP as well. Yeah, that's what we also recommend at Redfox to our clients as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, and then okay, someone answered to that, and Zoro answered, you can use access control checks, so it ensures that data is provided only. Yeah, that's one of the ways, right? Yeah. Anil asks, what measures can be taken to secure third-party dependencies and libraries?
So what we do, basically we check the version of this third party dependency and look for whether they are vulnerable to any other kind of attack. There are a lot of CVs that are basically particular about these frameworks as well as these libraries. So basically, yeah, we check the version and we will find that if there are any vulnerability there, we basically tell our clients to basically upgrade to the latest.
The latest one, right? So the best way to do is just upgrade it, right? Okay. Srishti is asking, how can attackers bypass input validation mechanisms in modern web applications? So I think this is WAF related, but just one liner, guys.
So there are different techniques. There are encoding techniques as well that you can implement. So in order to bypass this these situations where WAF is trying to block you.
So I think this web are like automated tools, right? So if we go the manual way, I think these bypasses can easily these protections can be easily bypassed.
Okay, cool. That's pretty sweet. I'll move to the next one. What is broken access control or BAC? Can you shed some light on this?
So broken access in simplest terms is basically doing something that you are not authorized to do. So
that's why the word broken.
Yeah, that's why the word broken. So if I can give a very simple example. So basically, if suppose you are given a role of a user on a web application, and you are able to perform basically able to perform operations as a different user or maybe as an admin. So that's the prime case of your broken access control. And one thing about this vulnerability is that I think it has now moved from the last I think in the last OWASP guide OWASP list that they have released, it was on 5th position and injection was on the 1st position. Now the roles are fixed. Now in the latest OWASP top 10, this vulnerability is now at the top. And I think I agree with it because that's what we are seeing in our engagements. There are a lot of broken access control vulnerabilities that we are finding in our applications as well. So that's why I think the list that they have given is very accurate.
Question, guys. Is IDOR a subset of BAC?
Yeah.
Could you say that?
So it's I like to call it brothers and sisters. They are really the same thing. That is how I reference to it while in my learning path. So it's the same thing. So what is happening is you are an unauthorized user, but you are actually accessing something that is really not for you. But in IDOR, what happens is you are using an ID, or let's say it's an integer. You are tampering with that. In broken access control, it can be something more related to URL. So in a lot of web applications that even we have encountered, we have seen that the admin control panel usually has a URL. It can be something like test website / admin control. And if I use that URL, and then I'm able to access it, it's called broken access control. So only difference is integers and then like URL. Exactly.
Okay, fantastic. And again, I would assume the recommendation would be same.
Yeah. Okay. So one special thing about your broken access control prevention is basically, I would say that this vulnerability arise because of the mistake of a developer. Why I would say that? Because I think we basically look for a flaw in a logic, and logics are implemented by the developers. So I don't think you can protect this specific vulnerability using any secure frameworks or any such things like that. So the best thing is maybe educate developers as well as their testing team to basically thoroughly test the logic they have implemented in their application, and then just go from there.
I would like to add a point as well here. So it's like implementing access control checks on every page, and also if the user somehow he gets access to the URL, attacker let's say, you still need to have those server side checks in order to really know if that is the user that is authorized to get that object.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So we'll take this one in Hindi for our audience actually. Excesses क्या है? और dangerous क्यों है?
Okay. So
You can mix it up. Yeah, right.
yeah. So XSS actually it stands for cross-site scripting. So cross-site scripting में basically हम लोग क्या करता है कि the attacker, I'm so sorry. What does the attacker does is he actually uses JavaScript. तो JavaScript को वो हम लोग input fields में डालते हैं या search bar में डाल सकते हैं and वो JavaScript use करके वो execute होता है browser पे and he can perform different actions. जैसे कि taking cookies, stealing cookies, getting the domain name, getting the document location. There are a lot of things. So there are two types. The one is the one is reflected और दूसरा वाला जो है वो stored cross-site scripting है. तो the difference is basically जो reflected वाला है उसमें after you refresh the page it goes away, but the more dangerous one is the stored one, because stored में क्या होता है exactly कि जब वो कोई पेज में लोड होता है it gets stored on the web servers. So the next time, let's say I would like to give it an example. So let's say it's Facebook and someone has exploited a JavaScript vulnerability cross-site scripting in the comment field. तो अगर comment में वो JavaScript है, ठीक है, तो every time you or me or him we visit that section, the JavaScript gets executed और हम लोग का जो cookies और login information है वो अटैकर के पास जाएगा.
And then they can just log in. अंदर जा सकते हैं, right? Cool. And इसका protection?
तो वही इसका भी प्रोटेक्शन आई वुड से कि आप जो है इनपुट को आप एनकोड करो एंड पुट बेसिकली ब्लैक लिस्ट सम ऑफ द कैरेक्टर्स दैट आर यू नो इज वेरी, जो बहुत ही स्पेसिफिक है आपके जो इनपुट जो हम डालते हैं जावास्क्रिप्ट में. एंड ऑल्सो व्हाट यू कैन डू, जो आउटपुट जाता है HTML पेज पे उसको आप एनकोड कर सकते हो सो दैट वो रेंडर नहीं होगा पेज पे. तो आपका HTML पेज उसको एज ए स्ट्रिंग ट्रीट करेगा एंड वो एज अ कोड नहीं एग्जीक्यूट करेगा, एज ए नॉर्मल स्ट्रिंग एग्जीक्यूट करेगा.
तो OWASP ये रिकमेंड करता है?
या ओके, दैट्स ये सेम चीज हम अपने क्लाइंट्स को भी रिकमेंड करते हैं.
एग्जैक्टली. ओके, परफेक्ट. SQL इंजेक्शन गाइस, ये अभी SQL इंजेक्शन अभी मिलता है या कम हो गया या क्या है ये SQL इंजेक्शन होता क्या है?
या बहुत कम चांस है, बट स्टिल मैं कहूँगा कि अगर मिलता है तो बहुत बड़ी फाइंडिंग है, बिकॉज की सिविरिटी वेरी हाई है, बहुत हाई है. क्योंकि क्या होता है कि आपके SQL इंजेक्शन में समझा तो पहले ऑडियंस को अपनी जिसको SQL इंजेक्शन के बारे में नहीं पता. सो SQL इंजेक्शन में बेसिकली हम जो इनपुट होता है, इनपुट को हम सेंड करते हैं वेबसाइट को, और वेबसाइट क्या करता है उस इनपुट को बैकएंड सर्वर पे एक आपका क्वेरी होता है, और वो क्वेरी क्या करता है अपना डेटा को फेच करता है डेटाबेस से. तो अगर हम उस क्वेरी में अपना इनपुट डेटा ऐड कर सकें तो बेसिकली क्वेरी हमारे हिसाब से चलेगी, राइट. सो नाउ हम अपने क्वेरी को ऐसे क्राफ्ट करते हैं कि ताकि हम अपने हिसाब से डेटा निकाल सके डेटाबेस से, इंस्टेड ऑफ लाइक जो उसका इंटरनेट पर्पज़ है. सो एक मैं अपना एग्जांपल देना चाहता हूँ इसके बारे में. सो क्या हुआ था कि मैंने जैसे स्टार्टिंग में बताया कि मैं एज अ फुल स्टैक डेवलपर काम करता था इन्फोसिस में. सो वहाँ पे जो मेरा क्लाइंट था बहुत बड़ा, आई वुड से कि बहुत बड़ा टेलीकम्युनिकेशन कंपनी थी. तो बेसिकली मैं उसके एक बार ऐसी कोड को रीड थ्रू कर रहा था, तो वहाँ पे मेरे को देखा कि जो आपका SQL का जो क्वेरी है वो स्ट्रिंग कॉन्कैटिनेशन यूज़ करके क्रिएट हो रहा था, और जो कि वेरी प्राइम केस ऑफ SQL इंजेक्शन. बाकी जो कोड था वो सेफ था क्योंकि उसमें बेसिकली हम पैरामीटराइज्ड क्वेरीज का यूज़ कर रहे थे, वही बताता हूँ क्या होता है. बट इन केस ऑफ दैट स्पेसिफिक क्वेरी वो स्ट्रिंग कॉन्कैटिनेशन का यूज़ कर रहा था. मेरे बहुत ही ज़्यादा ट्विस्टिंग वर्ड है, बट या सो क्या हुआ कि मैंने ये इंसिडेंट अपने लीड को बोला, जो मेरा टेक लीड था. मैंने उसको बताया कि भाई पहले तो मेरे को समझाना पड़ा उसको कि SQL इंजेक्शन होता क्या है, फिर मैंने बताया कि सर सिविरिटी क्या है. तो यू नो व्हाट इज रिप्लाई वाज कि छोड़ना चलता है ना, अपना कोड लिखा हुआ चल रहा है अभी तक तो चलने दे, क्यों चेंज करना है. सो हम इस माइंडसेट के खिलाफ ये पॉडकास्ट इसीलिए है ताकि हम कोई डेवलपर भी अगर सुन रहा है इसको तो वो भी सेफ कोडिंग प्रैक्टिसेस यूज़ कर सके अपने कोड में और प्रिवेंट कर सके. एंड इसको SQL इंजेक्शन को बचाते कैसे, जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि पैरामीटराइज्ड क्वेरीज होते हैं, आप उनके बारे में नेट पे पढ़ सकते हो हाउ दे वर्क. और आई थिंक जो मैंने अभी करंट इंडस्ट्री में देखा है कि मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल और डेवलपर्स आर नाउ मूविंग टुवर्ड पैरामीटराइज्ड क्वेरीज. दैट्स व्हाई फाइंडिंग SQL इंजेक्शन आज के टाइम पे थोड़ा सा रेयर है, बट अगर मिलती है तो बेसिकली एज आई टोल्ड कि हम बेसिकली डेटाबेस के साथ ही खेल रहे हैं, और डेटाबेस के साथ खेल रहे हैं इसका मतलब सारा डेटा हम आराम से निकाल सकते हैं.
सेम बग मेरे को भी एक बार एक प्रोजेक्ट में मिला था, तो इट वाज नॉट एग्जैक्टली एसक्यूएल, इट वाज एसक्यूएल, पर एक्चुअली यूआरएल था ना जो नॉर्मल यूजर था और एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर यूजर था। तो नॉर्मल यूजर के यूआरएल में प्रोफाइल के बाजू में सिर्फ सिलेक्ट स्टेटमेंट था, और एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर यूजर के इसमें लाइक इफ यू कुड चेंज दैट सिलेक्ट टू अपडेट, you could actually edit that thing, edit the profile. It was as simple as that.
Wow. Okay. So थोड़े questions आए हैं. How can XSS be used to exploit browser vulnerabilities?
So cross scripting हम क्या कर रहे हैं? हम बेसिकली ब्राउजर को बोल रहे हैं ब्राउजर तू मेरा कोड रन कर, ठीक है, और हम कोड ऐसा लिख सकते हैं कि हम ब्राउजर से बोल सकते हैं कि भाई तू इस सेशन में यूजर का सेशन है उसका मेरा कुकी दे। कुकी क्या करता है? बेसिकली यूजर को आइडेंटिफाई करता है। अगर हमारे पास कुकी आ गई उसकी तो बेसिकली हम वैसे उस यूजर बन सकते हैं। और सपोज करो कि हमारा एडमिन ने हमारा बेसिकली जो पेज खोला जिसपे हम कर सकते हैं वो क्रॉस साइट स्क्रिप्टिंग, अगर एडमिन ने वो पेज खोला हमारे पास एडमिन की कुकी आ गई, सो बेसिकली हमारा पूरा कंट्रोल है वेबसाइट का।
I see. So basically cookies browser storage में रहती है, और JavaScript से आप रीड करके ले सकते हो।
So there are different things that developers can use. So I would say कि आप जब भी कुकीज को मतलब क्रिएट करो तो उसमें मेक श्योर करो कि उस पर HTTP ओनली फ्लैग हो, और I think that's the best. That's the main one.
Yeah, sure. Because XSS, ये जो आपने बोला अभी browser related vulnerability, it can also be used to deface websites as well. So बहुत बार ऐसा होता है, there are URLs or links where you go and then there's like pop up every time and you're like close it. Yeah, that's basically
वो hackers ने डाल ही दिया है, right? What worse can you do with XSS on a website? What worst? I think the worst one I know is you can log keystrokes as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Actually.
You can actually pick up on what people are typing as well.
That's why you see on government website, banking website, they recommend to use virtual keyboard. So that's why the reason.
The main reason, right? I think that's the worst. But cookies भी अगर मिल जाती है तो
credential आ ही जाएगा वो।
Right. Is Net Protector antivirus reliable or not, guys?
I don't think अपने वेब के केस में उतना ये relevant है, because as I told you, the best measure you can take is sanitize the user input and encode the user output. I think that's the best recommendation for every.
But अगर कंज्यूमर को देखना है तो कैसे प्रोटेक्ट हो? I think कंज्यूमर कुछ कर ही नहीं सकता।
कर सकता है, मे बी कोई malicious लिंक ना खोले, वो मेल पे आई हो, राइट, वो एक्सेस के लिए देख सकते हैं।
Cool. Can you give examples of exploiting SQL injection in NoSQL database?
या सो अपने पास डिफरेंट NoSQL डेटाबेस होते हैं, जैसे आपका MongoDB हो गया, आई थिंक Redis is also the one, but I think MongoDB is one of the most prevalent. So there are ways that you can basically hack those type of databases as well. So the input is different from your normal quotes or 1 = 1 dash. I think anyone who know about these quotes or these strings, they know about SQL injection. But in case of your NoSQL injection, what we do basically in our input, we say that okay, I will give an example. Basically we use JSON inputs, and in then JSON input we like make the application basically we try to confuse the application. So basically we can send input like not equals to null. So if we can send that, basically it confuses the application to what input it has to give, और basically वो फिर आपका different basically उसको logic को हम basically confuse कर रहे हैं।
GraphQL also, right? GraphQL.
Yeah, I think similar to GraphQL.
GraphQL के हिसाब से, right? Cool. The next good one is HTTP response manipulation. I think many pen testers actually don't test this out, but it's a very cool bug. One of you guys, can you?
Yeah, I think I know Tarak has exploited lots of applications using this vulnerability. So I would say कि Tarak.
Yeah, sure. So as easy, it's basically response manipulation. But before I get into it, let me just give you a bit of a client server architecture. Okay, so you guys must be familiar with Burp Suite. So what it actually does is acts like a man in the middle proxy. So there's client, there's server. Whatever the client will ask for, the server will send a response. Okay, so that is why the name HTTP response manipulation. So now you're talking about the response that is coming from the server. So what happens is that, let's say there are a lot of APIs also being used in today's web applications. So what these APIs do, it is also a developer's fault. So if him being an ex-developer, I'm really not making a mockery of him, but still. So it's like they have a parameter that I have personally experienced this in my pen test, like is admin, and then there is a value, it's true or it's false. So when you're a normal user, it's as easy, it's false, right? But when you want to escalate that is vertical privilege escalation again, and you can just change that value to true, and you actually now have the administrator access over the web application.
So this is request from the browser or
From the server.
From the server,
from
right?
the
That's
server.
the response you're getting from the server.
Yeah, basically just the response that we are getting from the server, we are intercepting that request in between and then manipulating the parameter, and when that parameter basically reach your front end, and front end code is written like that, if it is true then give them the admin functionality.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what we do there.
Right? Then how can this be prevented, guys?
This can be prevented in different ways. Like second is the first thing is you need to implement server side checks as if it is really the authorized user who is asking for it. You can check for their cookies as well. So if the request is coming from a cookie that is for a normal user, even though he's messing up with the API calls, the server is like, hey dude, I know it's your cookie, you're not the administrator. I'm not going to give you that information. So it's as simple as that.
And I think the best recommendation I would say that use JSON web tokens basically to prevent this vulnerability, and implement that JWT in a secure way, because there are ways bypassing that.
But there are also different things that you could really do with response manipulation, because there are certain you can bypass file type.
I think one of you guys found in response manipulation, you got an IDOR also, right? I saw one of those things.
Yeah.
Right? In the response, there is an ID and then.
Yeah, actually. It was really crazy. But it was really weird.
Crazy things.
Yeah, but it was really weird. It's like, it goes like what happened actually in that situation that, let's say there are two accounts, and I could actually tamper with the ID in the response of the request, and very weirdly the file got transferred from that user account to mine. So it's as simple as
Okay, this is fantastic. Now let's move to our academy side. How can someone learn web hacking ethical way? And what would you guys suggest to them?
So I think for all the newcomers in the cybersecurity field, I will say that start from our basic cybersecurity course that we have, and if you pick things from there, then we also have a advanced web hacking course. And what's best about our courses are that we also provide a lab with it that complements our theory part. So you can practice from there. And if you have like enough skill, then I think there are also bug bounty programs where you can get a real world example as well. But I think if you want a visual way of learning, then I think our courses are one of the best out there. And one more resource that I would like to say, that if someone who wants to come into industry and they like to learn from reading, so I think we have there is a website, I think Burpsuit Academy. I think they have a good content as well. Yeah, so Portsfigure Lab. So if you want text-based learning, I think that you can take, and if you want visual-based learning, then our courses are one of the best.
So I feel like the course that we have, it's more realistic.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's from a developer's perspective also.
I would actually like to add something to this point. So like starting off, so there are external resources like Portsfigure Labs, Try Hack Me, Hack the Box, all of these things are there that are publicly available. But when you're like new to this field and you're trying to learn more about it, you really don't have a path, or you really don't know what to expect, or how should I approach a web application. That was
also these websites are like focused on the CTF style of.
Exactly. All of these websites are actually they are more of a CTF based ones, so more rather than a real world example. So when you are new or a beginner and you are like encountering a web application pen test, should probably not know the approach that you need. So it obviously takes a lot of experience which we have over here, and that is why we have laid all of these things in this course. So the web application course, both basic and advanced, that are being offered by us, they have all the content and they can actually give you a good pathway as to real pen test. So like
they can get hired
as well.
Yeah.
That's what we also recommend if we are interviewing someone and we feel like they're lacking somewhere, and so we advise them to basically to go through our courses, and we have also hired one of the guys that he was basically, we advised them to basically just go look at our courses, and they have picked things up from there, and basically we get hired them. So
so we spoke about the basics, we spoke about advanced. There's a Windows red teaming course also. And what about upcoming courses, right? So I think we are coming up with iOS, Android, a lot of other courses that we are coming in.
So I think what are the courses we have up? I think we have our web basic course, we have our web advanced course, as well as our Windows red teaming course as well, right? So I think apart from that, we are going to release I think Windows red teaming extreme course, then iOS and Android are also in the pipeline, and I think we are also working on the thick client course as well.
Again,
Plus, I would say one of the major area of interest for people are hardware hacking, right? So we are also, I think we already have some podcast on hardware hacking as well. So and we are also coming out with for people who are interested in hardware hacking. So we are going to come up with a course for hardware as well. So these are some of the.
We have a lot of questions actually.
That's why we are here.
Red Cult is live, is asking XXC exploit walkthrough. I don't know how to address that, but
so
how would you? What is XXC and how do you exploit it?
So XXC, I think it's external entity injection. External entity injection. So basically, it's a way of visualizing the data. So it's like your normal JSON, but it's XML. So there are ways to basically inject some malicious input that XML, so that basically it can retrieve some data from the backend server as well. So I think there is a parameter, I think it's called, I think I'm not remembering the parameter name, but that parameter we can basically supply the name of the file as well. So basically, and we know which file I'm referring at your favorite, I call it etc password. He always remind me to tell it etc password. But that's what we can, these type of files we can take
more like
from
local file.
Correct.
So again, a very broad question by Kumar. What steps can businesses take to protect themselves from website hacking threats? So let's take two main ones and let's talk about it quickly. We have a lot of questions.
I think the main one,
two main suggestions.
So one of the very big, I think good suggestion that I can give, I think I've already given it. Basically, sanitize user input and encode user output. I think that's the best thing that they can do. That's the I think if they can implement this in a proper way, I think most of the vast time vulnerabilities will be over from their website.
Input validation would be the main.
Implementing web application firewalls as well, and always updating the contents. Always checking for like something like let's say jQuery. It's outdated. Make sure that your web application is actually implementing newer products and updated ones.
Cool. What is the role of HTTP response status codes and response manipulation?
So status code. So I will give you just an example. I think by giving an example, I can explain it in a very good way. So let's suppose there is a website, let's say website has an authentication mechanism, and if suppose there is the authorization has failed because we have given incorrect, as a hacker we have given, not a ethical hacker I would say, that we have given false input. Basically it will going to fail, right? We know it. So what we do basically in the burp, we get a 401 unauthorized request. So what we do in the basically we play with the HTTP code. So basically we change that code from 401 or 404 to 200, and sometimes maybe the website logic is implemented in such a way that if it checks that we are getting a 200 OK code from the server, then it's okay. The user is legitimate, and basically we can get into the website.
I would like to add a point as well. So briefly speaking about it, it's more of status codes. Can I just give a brief?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
So 200 stands for 200 OK response, like your request is, you will get the valid response. 300 is for redirection, 400 is for client side errors, 500 is for server side errors. So it's completely fine if you don't know about it. It's okay. So if I'm trying to access a file and let's say authorization checks are there, so what happens is that the server gives you a response saying, hey, it's 500, like server error, I can't give you this file, or 400, but you can actually change it to 200 OK, and you can manipulate the web application to send you the file which is not really authorized.
Okay, we have a few questions, more questions actually. Can you explain the importance of ethical hacking certifications and which ones are the most valuable?
I think I would say our courses are the best out there, and that's what I would suggest. But if you are looking for other certifications, I think again the same reference that we always go to, the Burpsuit Academy. They also have a certification that is complementing their course on content there. So I think that is one of them. And yeah, but I can suggest some courses, but they are very costly. So that's why $2,000 courses, as we call them.
And there are many that are like multiple choice.
Yeah, maybe I would say also go through your bug bounty write-ups as well, because that will give you a real world experience as well.
Cool. How can an attacker use HTTP response splitting to exploit applications, and what countermeasures can be implemented? HTTP response splitting.
Actually, I have not personally seen this vulnerability. Yeah, I think it's not that common.
It's not that common. Yeah.
But by judging the name, maybe we are going to again, what's the name of the vulnerability?
HTTP response splitting.
Yeah, I think maybe.
So I think I know about it. It's briefly I've read about it, not in depth, but I know about it. So what happens is that basically there are two requests, which there are two requests, and you send it and try to confuse the server in a way that it actually looks at the second request that you have sent in the body, and then the server actually gives you the information for that.
Probably put a carriage return and all of that, right?
Yeah, carriage return, line feed, something. Yeah, CRLF.
Okay, yeah. So that's a new vulnerability for me. So that shows you that even if you are pen testing and if you are experienced here, you are always learning.
Yeah. So it's really uncommon, very really rare.
How can you protect your web application from malicious HTTP response manipulation?
Yeah, I think same broken.
Yeah, I think we have answered that. Mahesh is asking a lot of questions. Do you guys have any live training session?
Yeah, I think we already have given some live training sessions in different conferences.
I think we went to B-Sides as well. Yeah. And can you guys briefly say what we did in B-Sides?
So B-Sides, basically we went there for our Windows Red Teaming training.
Go, right?
Yeah, B-Sides Go I'm talking about. So where we did a training on Windows Red Teaming. We basically we start from we told them about from the very basics of the Active Directory and start from there and get into depth on all the attacks that are covered in that specific training. But we are also coming up with the different training on the web applications as well, because that's what in demand, I would say, in India specifically, because जितने भी नए कमर्स है वो देखते हैं कि if they can start off with web basics, so थोड़ा उनको एक फील्ड का कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्ड होता है, थोड़ा फील्ड के बारे में जान भी लेते हैं, उनको पता लग जाता है कि इनको इंटरेस्ट है कि नहीं. सो आई थिंक इसलिए हम भी जो है बेसिकली वी आर आल्सो गोइंग इन दैट डायरेक्शन एज वेल एंड कमिंग अप विद द
application security is actually really in demand these days, right? Avinash is asking, I'm not from a tech background and want to get into hacking, ethical hacking. Avinash, how should I start and which course do you suggest I begin at Redfox Academy?
I think courses we have already discussed that start with the basics course, web hacking basic and web hacking, then we can take from there to web hacking advanced. And the one tool I would suggest is learn about Burpsuit. And if you are really good about different functionalities or different modules of Burpsuit, I think you can go a long way, because that's the one tool, the only tool that I would suggest. Basically the most important one,
like the Bible. It's really the most important thing.
Yeah. And also the best thing about this is the community version is free to use. So we can basically pick things up from there. There is no initial cost for learning.
Cool. So I think we have come to the end of this podcast. It has been a fascinating podcast. You have actually listened from like real pen testers what kind of bugs that you see in the wild actually. Note that we do this ethically. We just don't go out in the wild and hack stuff. We are working very closely with the clients. We spoke about our courses. We spoke about the common bugs that we see, how we can fix them. We also spoke about like a few tools, the Bob Speed being the main tool for a web application pen tester. So before we end, any closing thoughts, guys? Any closing thoughts? 1 minute each, guys.
Yeah. So okay. So basically, the only closing thought I have that start learning. If you are just thinking that I will learn, you are not going to get anywhere. So just start learning, because the initial investment is very low if you are coming into this industry. So you can start from the web basics, learn about how website works, how server works, and again learn about how these tools work, especially your burp suite. Yeah, and what else I would yeah, I think you can just start from there. At least start.
So like getting into hacking, I personally feel one should actually take the web application as the first approach, because it helps you to actually gain more knowledge about what actual stuff is going on. And even I personally followed it. It helps you to, like, when you're trying to shift to other fields as well, this is something that is really is a good foothold. Right?
Yeah, and in India especially, there are a lot of jobs for web application.
So one thing I would suggest is, like, there's a book called Entangled Web. You want to know how the web works, what are cookies, how the server and client communicate. I think Entangled Web is a very good book. It's very cheap as well. I think you'll find an online version for free. So you can actually buy that and give it a read, and then probably get into this space, right? I think this is kind of like the end of this podcast. I thank you all for joining in. Stay tuned for our future podcast. We have some exciting content that's going to be coming in. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other channels. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for listening in. Thank you.